Let me ask you a question. What film series combines the American Civil Rights Movement with the Holocaust, dance battles, and Romeo and Juliet? If your answer is the Disney Zombies trilogy, you'd be correct. In 2018, Disney Channel released their original movie, Zombies, and apparently it was popular enough to warrant 2 more sequels. I was vaguely aware of the original film, but didn't know that there were any sequels until the 3rd one was put on Disney+. The second film came out in early 2020, and in 2022 we got the 3rd film, but instead of it being a DCOM or a Disney Channel original movie, it's now considered a Disney Plus original film, which I guess is a step up considering how it does have a bigger budget and it's nestled between all of the big Marvel and Star Wars releases. But I couldn't just skip to the 3rd film, so I sat down and I decided to watch all 3 movies. And after enduring the entire 4.5 hours that I committed to this, I can say with all of my certainty that these Zombies movies are a hot mess. Why, might you ask? Well, my name's Josh Taylor, this is Modern Mouse, and today I want to talk about the Disney Zombies trilogy and its absolutely insane use and interpretation of social and political issues. Did I color my hair specifically for this video? Yes, and I have absolutely 0 regrets. In fact, in the Zombies movies, one of the best things about them is their use of color and the overall look and presentation of them. The sets, the costuming, the hair, the makeup are all distinct with their own style. They're somehow in between being Tim Burton-esque and feeling more like a stage production. Obviously, these are films aimed at a younger demographic, so doing some sort of scary Walking Dead zombies thing just doesn't make sense. These are also big song and dance films, so it makes sense that they would feel like a stage production. Basically, it's the formula for any tween movie after Disney had such crazy success with the High School Musical films. Some of the songs are good, and the choreography throughout all 3 films is actually impressive, but when these films introduce their social messages, it becomes difficult to take those messages seriously. These films also don't just introduce zombies, but a load of other monsters, which only dilute the point of those messages further. I also want to point out that the acting in general is pretty subpar.
Our razor-sharp claws will gut them and splatter their blood. Too much.
The 2 lead characters, Zed and Addison, played by Milo Manheim and Meg Donnelly, aren't terrible. At times I actually thought that they were really good, and for them in particular, with each new film, the acting got a little bit better. But they alone couldn't prop up these movies. And I can't fully blame the acting, because the writing throughout these movies is not good.
Take us to your leader, your cheerleader.
There are times when characters overly explain things that are going on just to get it across to the audience, and then the tone shifts don't really work because they go between wacky cheesy humor, West Side Story dance battles, and social messaging. Not to mention that these films don't just try and tackle a single issue, but they bring up a ton of different problems. In the span of 4.5 hours, the Zombies movies either mention or attempt to solve the Holocaust-like treatment of zombies, segregation, climate change, pollution, colonization, land ownership, racial profiling by police, human experimentation, interracial relationships, and LGBTQ issues. I might have actually missed a few because at one point my brain just couldn't handle the massive amount of things that these films were trying to solve. And because of the sheer number of issues that these films try to tackle, the actual response to them feels rather empty. Every now and again, I get comments about how left-wing politics are about empty promises or virtue signaling or radical self-importance. And I usually fight against a lot of those comments because I do believe that social messages in our stories are important. Morality within our stories helps us find solutions to our human problems. The thing with all of these Zombies movies, though, is that they showcase all of these problems, but they don't really show how difficult and challenging the solutions actually are. The first film starts with a comic book-like animated segment that tells us how zombies came to be. In this film, they were a product of a nuclear disaster 50 years prior, and after attacking and killing humans, the zombies were kept out of the town of Seabrook as barricades were put up. Then we meet Zed and Addison, our two leads, who look directly into the camera and dump a ton of information on us in order to further build the world that we're entering. Zed tells us that zombies have to wear a patch on their clothing, signifying that they're actually zombies, similar to how Jewish people were told to wear the Star of David during the Holocaust. It's also a tie to Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter, which I guess fits in with the romance between our two lead characters. You can also tell that Zed, his family, and his friends are all zombies because they wear darker colored clothes and have green hair. I think that Gerard Way would be really proud.
Yeah, I used to be a comic artist, so...
Things are looking progressive, though, at Seabrook High School because they're integrating zombies into their human school for the first time. But the school entrance has been divided between zombies and quote-unquote normals. All of the zombies are also put into one classroom rather than getting to mix and mingle with the humans. These zombies who were promised an integrated school experience have now been let down. Zed's friend Eliza calls for a revolution, which is a totally valid argument, but Zed talks her down from it, and throughout the film, her choice to start this uprising is played off as a joke. It's at this point that I felt that these movies weren't really interested in finding the solutions to the problems that they were bringing up. Fast forward a little bit, and Zed has convinced the principal of the school that he should play on the football team because he has superhuman strength when his Z-Band doesn't work. The wristwatch-like Z-Band is actually a device made by humans that every zombie has to wear in order to not eat anyone. When Zed's Z-Band goes haywire, he zombies out and gains the ability of superhuman strength. But the possibility of eating someone is always there. The potential of Zed or any of the other zombies going off and killing someone makes the analogy to American segregation and the civil rights movement feel much more ill-conceived. But he continues to zombie out in order to win football games, all in the name of zombies being allowed to integrate. Moving forward, Zed and Addison fall in love, making the film a take on Romeo and Juliet and the many song and dance West Side Story type versions of that story. Addison is also secretly not human because she has silver hair, but she covers herself up with a blonde wig so that nobody notices. And when Zed goes to pick up Addison for a date, something that she's worried about due to how her family might treat Zed, her family is met at the door by Zed, who's covered himself up to look more human. They then go on this date to a frozen yogurt shop, but the only flavor that's available is vanilla. I think this is supposed to showcase how the humans don't like change or thinking differently, making them all a bit boring and dull.
In some places, this hair might be odd in like a cool way, but not at Seabrook. People here hate anything that's different.
In fact, as the film goes on, the head cheerleader at the school, Bucky, kicks anyone off the squad who thinks differently than him, aka anti-zombie. And that includes Addison.
What are you doing?
Don't doubt me. We are cheerleaders. We are flawless.
Strangely, Bucky is the cousin of Addison and is exactly the model of what the zombies are fighting against. He's arrogant, egocentric, and I think they hint at the fact that he's in love with his cousin, but I'm not going to linger on that here. He's been unchallenged as the cool kid at school and fights against this integration because that would mean that he would lose his top spot as the guy on campus. His story shows that ultimately his racism against the zombies dilutes his squad, and they can't win the cheerleading competition with such a small group. They eventually have to involve the zombies and the pro-zombie humans in order to succeed. There's also a few throwaway lines about how the police are unfairly treating zombies. Addison's dad is the chief of the police, so I guess this is their chance to talk about racial profiling. There you go. My favorite character in this movie, actually in the entire series, was the coach of the football team, played by Jonathan Langdon, who simply goes by Coach.
With a monster-like monster player, like you, we could turn the football team around. And with fan support, maybe I can keep my job, move out of my parents' basement, get a cat, get a gym membership, turn it on.
He has his own little story throughout all the films. In the first movie, he's close to losing his job as the football coach for the school, but by the third film, he's running his own frozen yogurt shop, which has expanded far beyond them serving vanilla. Amazing progress on his part, and I was rooting for him the whole time. At the end of the first movie, they finally begin true integration, thanks to Zed being the star athlete on the football team, and Addison believing that we're all stronger together. It feels like too simple of a solution, and that's really because it is. It's a hollow promise that still doesn't get rid of all the racism in Seabrook. Also, despite Addison eventually taking off her wig, the two lead characters never really address their need to hide their true identities. That's actually where the second film decides to pick up. Zombies 2 introduces werewolves into the story. You can tell that they're werewolves because they all wear fur and purple and have streaks of blonde in their hair. It's made pretty clear that they represent indigenous Americans who were pushed off of their land. The werewolves have this connection to a moonstone, which is this big giant rock thing. It's a spiritual connection to the earth for them, and they all have these necklaces that harness its power. Without the necklaces and the power of the moonstone, they all become really sick and could potentially die. I'm not sure if this was some sort of way to say that colonization of the Americas brought disease along with it. If so, it's definitely a reach.
You guys can't be here. There are laws against this.
Bad laws are meant to be broken.
And monsters don't follow the rules. Zombies are a part of Seabrook, Bucky, and we deserve to be here.
We're a part of Seabrook, too. The originals, in fact.
At Seabrook High School, the humans still don't like the zombies, and when werewolves come into town from the forest areas that they live in, both of the zombies and the humans start hating on them. The zombies are also punished because of this new werewolf threat. All of the non-humans have to abide by this curfew, and all of the progress made by the zombies is now null and void because of the fear of all of these humans. It makes sense, but it does start to overcomplicate the analogy to social issues that these films were all trying to shoot for. We also further Addison's story as she is unsure of who she is. The werewolves believe that their leader is a silver-haired woman, so naturally they think Addison might be a werewolf. And Zed fears for the worst because he doesn't want Addison to go through the same type of racism that he's faced. It's weird because he also hates the werewolves, so it feels a bit contradictory on his part. And despite a big makeover in the middle of the film with a new werewolf costume, Addison isn't really a werewolf, and she still doesn't know where she fits in. Zed's hatred for werewolves is also seen as selfish, and it hurts his relationship with Addison. He wants to take her to Seabrook's version of the prom, which they call prawn because the school mascot's a shrimp. Also, the shrimp character is absolutely fantastic, and I wish I could have seen him way more often. Zed also has to learn to fight for equality for all people in order to get what he wants. He runs for school president against Bucky, who is still pretty anti-zombie, and they have this really wild debate that can only be summed up as the whitest version of Hamilton I've ever seen. Zed eventually loses control and zombies out, which allows Bucky to win and become the school president. I don't really know what this subplot was all about, beyond the idea that Zed and Bucky needed something to do, because the second film does feel more like Addison's story trying to figure out who she is, and the werewolves talking about colonization and land ownership. And like the previous film, this movie ends with this idea of just listening to each other and treating each other nicely and coming together. It's this big kumbaya message. Again, this all just feels very oversimplified. The final film in the trilogy takes us to senior year. Zed is looking to be the first zombie to ever go to college, and Addison is still looking for her own identity while also captaining the mixed-race cheerleading squad. All of these movies have lots of cheerleading. I guess it gives a valid reason to why everyone can so easily break into a big dance number. The third movie heavily focuses on this idea that Addison is the one person that can bring all of these different peoples together, and that she's the person that makes everything work. So now when aliens, yes, aliens come to invade Earth, she's the one to integrate them in with everybody else. Also, like the zombies and werewolves, The aliens have their own look, with silver and blue outfits as well as blue-colored hair. The aliens are looking for something that will help guide them to Utopia, since they lost their own planet. It's stated that they neglected their planet and didn't fight for the rights of it, which forced them to leave, and that represents pollution and climate change.
Our planet was destroyed by environmental blight built up over many years.
What? Over years? Didn't anyone try to stop it?
No. And we lost everything. No one spoke up.
The werewolves are skeptical that the aliens are going to try and steal the moonstone, so they start to become hostile towards them. And the humans still don't like the zombies, and the zombies don't like the werewolves, so there's just a ton of low-key racism going on. Matt Cornett from High School Musical, the series, is one of the aliens, so good for him for getting more acting jobs, I guess. He plays this alien called Alan, and another alien named Aspen has a side story where she's originally infatuated with Zed, but after learning more about her own emotions, she falls in love with the werewolf girl Willa. Finally, after over 3 hours, we get queer representation in our film. Also, if you haven't picked up on the naming of people by now according to their race, then I don't think that you've been paying attention. Naturally, that leads to Addison recognizing that she's an alien. And apparently her grandmother was an alien and her mom has been hiding her identity this entire time. Addison's dad, the police chief who should notice more things than most people, was absolutely shocked at all of this, which makes me wonder how he went this long without seeing that his wife was wearing a wig throughout their entire relationship.
Mom, Grandma Angie was an alien.
That's impossible. Missy, tell her it's impossible.
Dale, I'm so sorry.
The aliens then recognize that the thing that will bring them to Utopia isn't an object like the Moonstone, but it's actually Addison herself. Of course, the natural storytelling of all of this is that non-aliens can't travel through space, so Addison and Zed have to say goodbye to each other for all of about 5 minutes. Then the aliens realize that despite all of the racial differences, the town of Seabrook is actually the real Utopia.
I know where my grandma wanted her people to live. The most perfectly imperfect place there is.
The final message of the last film is probably the best one. It focuses on how we should celebrate our differences, and even when the solutions are challenging, they're worth fighting for. The whole thing still ends with a big song and dance number where everybody comes together. I don't think that the Zombies movies are inherently bad for kids. I actually think that they bring up a lot of good messages that kids should be learning about. The way that everything is handled just feels like a bit too much, and it doesn't really work. It misses the mark on truly representing people and all of their different issues. These are the types of movies that right-wing extremists hold up as examples of left-wing propaganda. And while I don't think that they were actually trying to create propaganda here, they do come off a bit like it. I'm glad that these movies aren't popular enough to be mentioned by political pundits, because it wouldn't look good for anyone if it were. Even as I've sat down to think about these movies, I still don't know how I would rewrite them to make them better or more meaningful. I just don't think that this teen movie musical format that featured monsters was a way to get across this large number of messages that they were aiming for. Maybe if they had chosen to stick with just a singular message, it would have been better, but even with that, the musical comedy format would need to be very well written and have incredible acting in order to make it all work. I think that powerful messages of social change are great to introduce to people at any age. But the Zombies movies proves that you can't tackle all of the world's problems, and that you're better off picking a few ideas and digging deeper into them. You might be an advocate for something like women's rights, and even though you might care about all of these other things, you have to recognize that in order to make a real impact, you have to put all of your focus on that. And we have to allow other people to fight for the things that we don't have time for. Maybe the solution for these films should have been more based around the idea of trusting the right people to fight for the things that you can't. And in return, you'll fight for them. If you've seen the Zombies movies, leave your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think, because these were a lot. But I did enjoy going through, watching them, being able to sit down, write some notes, and give you my thoughts here. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and all that stuff. And until next time, my friends, thank you for watching, and maybe click this video right here to watch something else from me. In the meantime, keep moving forward.